During a family gathering, my husband's parent raised a glass and said, "We finally cut her out of the will, she never belonged anyway." My husband just smiled. I stood up, slammed my ring on the table, and said, "Perfect, because I'm filing for divorce tonight." Their faces froze mid-cheers. I'm Olivia, 34 years old, and I've been married to Benjamin for 8 years. We reside in Charleston, South Carolina, a city steeped in history and tradition. Our home is nestled in the historic district, surrounded by cobblestone streets and antebellum architecture. Benjamin comes from a long line of Charlestonians. His parents, Robert and Margaret, are well-known figures in the community, deeply involved in various social and cultural organizations. From the beginning, I sensed an unspoken expectation to fit into their world, a world of galas, charity events, and maintaining a certain image. Despite my efforts, I often felt like an outsider, as if I were auditioning for a role I wasn't quite suited for. The undercurrents of disapproval became more apparent over time. Subtle comments about my background, my career choices, and even my mannerisms would surface during family gatherings. They often reminisced about Benjamin's ex-girlfriend, Charlotte, highlighting her family's prominence and her seamless integration into their social circles. It was clear they had envisioned someone like her as their son's partner. One evening, Robert and Margaret hosted a dinner at their home in the French Quarter. Their residence is a testament to Charleston's rich history, adorned with artifacts and paintings that tell stories of generations past. The dining room, with its long mahogany table and crystal chandelier, exuded an air of old-world elegance. The evening began as most did, polite conversation, discussions about recent events in the community, and updates on family matters. The aroma of traditional low-country cuisine filled the air, a nod to the region's culinary heritage. As dessert was being served, a classic Huguenot torte, a Charleston specialty, Robert stood, gently tapping his wine glass to garner attention. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward him. "We have an announcement to make," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "After careful consideration and consultation, we've decided to update our estate plans. Olivia will no longer be included in the will." A hush enveloped the room. The clinking of silverware ceased, and all that remained was the soft hum of the chandelier's dimmed lights. I felt a rush of heat flood my face, a mixture of embarrassment and anger. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to Benjamin, searching for his reaction, his support. But he remained impassive, offering a slight nod of acknowledgement, as if he had been privy to this decision all along. The betrayal hit me like a tidal wave. The room blurred as tears welled up, but I refused to let them fall. Summoning every ounce of composure, I reached for my left hand, sliding off the wedding band that had symbolized our union for the past 8 years. The metal felt cold against my skin. With deliberate intent, I placed the ring on the table, the sound of it meeting the wood echoing in the silent room. "Perfect," I said, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "Because I'm filing for divorce tonight." Gasps rippled through the gathering. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide in shock. Robert's usually composed demeanor faltered, his brow furrowing in disbelief. Benjamin's face remained unreadable, but a flicker of something, regret, perhaps, crossed his eyes. Without another word, I rose from my seat, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The weight of their stares bore down on me as I made my way to the door. Each step felt both liberating and agonizing. As I reached the threshold, I paused, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Stepping out into the cool Charleston night, the scent of blooming jasmine filled the air. The distant sound of horse-drawn carriages and the gentle lapping of the Cooper River provided a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. I walked aimlessly through the historic streets, the gas lamps casting elongated shadows on the cobblestones. Memories of happier times flooded my mind, strolls along Waterfront Park, shared laughter at local oyster roasts, dreams of a future built together. But those dreams now lay shattered, fragments of a life I thought I knew. As dawn approached, I found myself standing before our home. The facade, with its intricate ironwork and shuttered windows, seemed to mock me. Gathering my resolve, I entered, the familiar creak of the floorboards greeting me. I knew the path ahead would be arduous. Conversations with attorneys, dividing assets, and the emotional toll of ending a significant chapter of my life loomed before me. But amidst the uncertainty, one thing was clear: I deserved to be in a relationship where I was valued, respected, and cherished. The journey to healing would be long, but I was ready to embark on it, one step at a time. I just sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring at the dark window while the house settled around me. The ticking clock in the hallway, usually a sound I found oddly comforting, suddenly grated on my nerves. Everything felt different now, like the soul had been sucked out of this home. I didn't cry. I couldn't. It was like my body hadn't caught up to the betrayal yet. I just kept hearing Robert's words in my head, like they were bouncing off every corner of my mind, followed by the dull echo of Benjamin's smile. That smile, that slight, complicit curl of the lips, haunted me more than anything else. By morning, I was running on adrenaline and coffee. I showered, dressed, and packed a small bag. Just the essentials, a couple outfits, some toiletries, my laptop, and the file folder I'd quietly been building for months. I didn't tell anyone this, but deep down, I think I always knew something wasn't right. The way Benjamin would forget to tell me about family events, or how he'd slide into silence when I brought up starting a family of our own. There were too many small betrayals, too many moments when I caught him watching me like he was evaluating my performance instead of just loving me. That folder contained documents, bank statements, insurance paperwork, and yes, even a few discreet photos I had someone take of him having lunch with Charlotte last year. Just lunch, sure, but it didn't look casual. Not with the way her hand was on his wrist, and his head was tilted toward hers like he was saying something he didn't want overheard. I'd hired a lawyer 3 months earlier. Just in case. I wasn't looking to leave back then, not really, but I wanted to understand what my rights were if things ever got worse. I had no idea things would blow up the way they did over dessert at Robert and Margaret's dining table, but I wasn't walking into this blind. I left Benjamin a note on the kitchen counter. I didn't sign it with love. I didn't even sign my name. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Don't contact me unless it's through my attorney. I drove straight to my friend Rowan's place in Mount Pleasant. She was the kind of friend who didn't ask questions unless you offered answers. When she opened the door, she just took one look at my face, nodded, and stepped aside. Rowan's house overlooked the marsh, the kind of place that always smelled faintly of salt and damp earth. We sat on her back porch in silence for a long time, watching the morning sun light up the water. Do I even want to know what they said to you? She finally asked, her voice low and cautious. I looked over, took a sip of the coffee she handed me, and shook my head. You couldn't make it up. She didn't press further, and I appreciated that. There's a certain grace in someone just holding space for you without trying to fix things. By noon, I had a consultation scheduled with my attorney, Carla Merriweather. A powerhouse if there ever was one. Older, sharp-tongued, and well-respected in Charleston's legal circles. I met her at her office downtown, in a sleek building that smelled like leather and quiet money. She greeted me with a brisk handshake and a piercing look. So? What finally pushed you over the edge? I told her everything. The dinner. The will. Benjamin's smile. She didn't look shocked. Not one bit. They've been prepping him for this for a while, she said, flipping through the papers I brought. It's a slow erosion, this kind of manipulation. They groom him to see you as a convenience, not a partner. Happens more often than you think. That word, groom, hit me hard. Because it was true. Benjamin used to be different. He wasn't warm, not exactly, but he was attentive. Curious. There was a gentleness in him I hadn't seen in years. Over time, he became colder. More performative. Everything he did was with an audience in mind, usually his parents. I laid out my concerns, including the potential infidelity, the asset transfers I'd started noticing in our joint accounts, and the fact that his parents were likely attempting to cut me off financially. Carla nodded, scribbling notes furiously. You've got leverage. Prenup or not, you've contributed to this marriage, socially, emotionally, even financially. You played their game. They can't erase you just because they've decided you're inconvenient. It felt good to hear that. Not just legally, but emotionally. For years, I'd gaslit myself into thinking I was imagining the distance, the disrespect, the exclusion. Now, with someone calling it what it was, it felt like I was finally regaining my footing. That night, Rowan and I opened a bottle of wine on her back deck and talked long into the humid air. I hate how calm you're being, she said. If it were me, I'd have thrown the whole damn roast chicken at Robert's smug face. I laughed. Believe me, I thought about it. But I figured silence and a divorce attorney would hurt more. We toasted to that. Over the next few days, the fallout began in earnest. Benjamin started calling. At first, it was once a voicemail, calm tone, asking me to talk things through. Then twice. Then 5 missed calls, followed by a text, "This is not how we handle things." The audacity. The next message came from Margaret, of all people. A polite, restrained email, "Olivia, I understand emotions were high, but I believe a private conversation would have been more appropriate. Family matters should be handled discreetly. Let's not let this spiral further." I didn't respond. Carla advised me to block their numbers and forward any further contact to her office. I did exactly that. What surprised me most was the response from people outside the immediate family. Benjamin's sister, Elise, reached out a week later. We'd never been close, she was more like their parents in many ways, but her message caught me off guard. I heard what happened. I just want to say. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. I always thought you were too good for this family. I didn't know how to respond. I still haven't. But it made me realize that the cracks in the facade were visible to more people than I thought. As I moved my things into a small rental near the Ashley River, I started to feel something unexpected: relief. There were painful moments, yes, going through my things, boxing up the life I thought I had, but the space was mine. Quiet. Honest. No performative dinners. No passive-aggressive remarks from Margaret. No expectation to play the part of the perfect wife. The hardest part wasn't the legal proceedings. It was reconciling the version of my marriage I had in my head with the reality of what it had become. Looking back, I think I knew for a long time that Benjamin had chosen his parents' approval over mine. I just didn't want to believe it. The real betrayal wasn't just being cut out of the will. It was the slow erosion of trust, the way he let them chip away at my worth in tiny, consistent ways, until I was little more than a fixture in his curated life. I began therapy shortly after moving out. My therapist, Yara, helped me unpack years of quiet hurt. She asked me something in our second session that stuck with me. Olivia, what would it feel like to stop performing? I didn't know how to answer that. I still don't, fully. But I'm learning. One day, one hard conversation at a time. And then something happened that I didn't expect. Something that cracked the whole situation wide open. It started with an envelope in my mailbox. It was from Benjamin. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note, and something else. Something that changed everything I thought I knew. The envelope was unassuming. A simple white paper with no return address, just my name scrawled across the front in Benjamin's familiar handwriting. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from him since I left. No texts. No phone calls. Just that one email from his mother, which I'd ignored. I sat down at the kitchen table, the letter in front of me like a lifeline. I could feel the tension coil in my stomach as I opened it, each fold of the paper resisting my movement as if it knew what was inside was something I wasn't ready to see. Inside, it was just a small, neatly written note. I unfolded it, my hands trembling a little more than I wanted to admit. Olivia, I don't know how we got here. But I'm asking for one chance to talk. We can't undo what's been done, but I can't let you leave without explaining myself. Please, let me explain. Benjamin, that was it. Simple, clean, and devastating. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the paper, as if the words would rearrange themselves if I gave them enough time. A part of me wanted to toss it in the trash. Another part felt like I needed to hear him out, to understand what had happened, or perhaps, what he thought had happened. But then came the second thing in the envelope. A small photograph, folded neatly. I took it out and almost dropped it when I saw what it was. It was a photo of Benjamin and Charlotte. I'd known about her before. Benjamin had confessed, in a rare moment of honesty, that she was someone from his past. Someone his parents had always liked. But this photo wasn't from years ago, like I assumed. It was recent. Very recent. In fact, it looked like it was taken only a few months ago, when I'd been at Rowan's for a weekend. In the photo, Benjamin and Charlotte were standing together, smiling like they were the happiest people in the world. She had her arm draped over his shoulder, a look of contentment that was foreign to me. Benjamin was smiling back, but it wasn't the smile I'd always seen, the forced, polite grin. This one was relaxed, natural. The realization hit me like a slap. They had been more than just old flames. They'd been in each other's lives more than I had known. More than I'd ever been allowed to know. I felt sick. There was no question in my mind now. Benjamin had been playing a dangerous game. He'd let his parents push me aside, let them convince him that he could have his cake and eat it too, that he could maintain the perfect family image while keeping Charlotte on the side. I had been so blind, so caught up in trying to keep the peace, that I hadn't seen it happening right under my nose. I didn't know what to do with this information. My instinct was to call him. To scream, to ask him why. But I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. And I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts right now. I called Rowan. I didn't even bother explaining much. I just told her to come over. She arrived about 20 minutes later. When I opened the door, she immediately saw the look on my face and didn't need to ask. She walked straight to the couch and sat down, waiting for me to speak. I handed her the photo without a word. Rowan studied it in silence, her brow furrowed as she took it all in. When she finally looked up at me, there was a sadness in her eyes that I hadn't expected. I thought you said he was over her, she said quietly. You told me they were just old friends. I was wrong, I whispered. He's still with her. I had spent so much time worrying about his family's disapproval, about my place in their world, that I missed the more obvious betrayal right in front of me. My whole marriage had been built on a foundation of lies. Of assumptions that I was too naive to see. Rowan let out a soft sigh. Olivia, I'm so sorry. This isn't on you. You gave him everything, and he couldn't even be honest with you. I didn't respond. The weight of her words settled heavily over me. My entire world felt like it was coming apart, piece by piece. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat by the window, staring out at the marsh as the water reflected the faint light of the street lamps. I thought about all the little moments, the times I had caught Benjamin's gaze lingering a bit too long when Charlotte was in the room, the way he had been so guarded with his phone and emails, the excuses he'd given when he was late or unavailable. How could I have been so blind? The next morning, I made the call. Not to Benjamin. To Carla. I needed answers. I needed to know how to move forward, how to protect myself, and how to ensure that Benjamin didn't get away with this. Carla's office was quiet and professional, the kind of place that made you feel small yet secure at the same time. She listened as I told her about the photo, about the lies, and about the emotional toll this had taken on me. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against her desk thoughtfully. Here's what we're going to do, she said, her voice cool and controlled. We'll file the divorce papers, and we'll make sure you get what you're entitled to. But more than that, we'll make sure we have every piece of evidence to show the court what's been going on. This isn't just about betrayal, it's about his manipulation and the way he's treated you. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. I'd spent so much time feeling like I wasn't enough. Like I had to prove myself. But now, I realized the only person I needed to prove anything to was myself. I can't promise this will be easy, Carla continued, but I will make sure we have a solid case. It's time to take back your power, Olivia. No more being the one left behind. Her words lit a fire inside me. For the first time in months, I felt something close to hope. But the hardest part still lay ahead. Benjamin wasn't going to go down quietly. He had more to lose than I did, and I knew it wasn't just his parents' approval he was protecting. It was something deeper, something darker. And whatever that was, I was ready to uncover it. As the days dragged on, I steeled myself for what was coming. Carla had been relentless in her approach, gathering evidence, filing motions, and preparing for what would undoubtedly be a difficult legal battle. I'd learned quickly that in Charleston, everything moved at a glacial pace, especially when it came to divorce and family matters. But I was in no rush. Time was on my side. Benjamin, on the other hand, seemed to be unraveling. His calls became increasingly frantic, messages pouring in every day, pleading for a chance to talk, to explain himself. I ignored them all. I couldn't let him manipulate me anymore. I'd been trying to piece together a life with someone who hadn't even cared enough to be honest with me, and that had to stop. The hardest part was the public nature of everything. In a city like Charleston, everyone knew everyone. When the divorce filings went public, I could feel the eyes of the community on me. There were whispers, raised eyebrows, and subtle comments from people who had once been my friends. But oddly enough, none of that bothered me. It was the betrayal that had hurt most, and now that it was all out in the open, the truth was a relief. A week before the official court hearing, I got a call from Rowan, who sounded more excited than I'd heard her in ages. You'll never believe this, she said, her voice practically vibrating. I ran into Charlotte today. At the market. I raised an eyebrow, feeling a knot form in my stomach. What happened? She was with Benjamin, Rowan continued, and they were so comfortable together. You know the way they used to look in that photo? It was the same thing, but more possessive, like they had something to prove. I felt a sharp pang in my chest, but I swallowed it. I had to stay focused. Okay, but what's this got to do with me? Rowan paused for a moment, as though gauging whether I was ready for what she was about to say. I overheard them talking. And Olivia, you're not going to believe what she said. She was laughing about it, saying that she knew Benjamin was married to you, but it was just a formality. That he was always going to be hers, that you were just the distraction until they could get back to what they had. My stomach turned. That was the final straw, the arrogant confidence Charlotte had in my place in their lives. She had never thought I would find out. Neither of them had. I'm done, I said quietly, barely hearing my own voice. I'm done. Rowan, sensing my resolve, gave me the space I needed. Let me know if you want to talk, okay? I'll be here. You've got this. The next day, I met with Carla again. I wasn't angry anymore. The anger had been replaced with something more focused, more deliberate. I had all the ammunition I needed. Benjamin and Charlotte thought they were untouchable. They had believed their lies would hold forever, but the truth had a way of making things crumble. I want to hit him where it hurts, I told Carla, my voice steady. I want to make sure he understands that his little game is over. Carla gave me a knowing look. Leave it to me. The strategy was simple but effective. We filed a motion to have the will contested. Benjamin's parents had been quick to remove me from the estate, but with the evidence of his affair, his manipulation, and the emotional distress I had been under, we had a case. Carla also included a request for a full accounting of their family assets. We weren't just asking for a fair split anymore, we were exposing everything. The money Benjamin had secretly moved, the property he had tried to hide, and the lavish gifts he had lavished on Charlotte, all of it was about to be exposed. I had no intention of playing nice with someone who had tried to manipulate me into believing I was the problem. I wanted Benjamin to face the full consequences of his actions, not only in the court of law but in the court of public opinion. It was time for him to feel the weight of his choices. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was quiet, the tension thick in the air as Benjamin and his legal team sat at the far side, looking polished and composed. But I could see the cracks. Benjamin was no longer the confident man who had once held me in his arms. He looked like a man who had already lost. His eyes kept darting to the door, to where Carla and I stood, waiting. When the hearing began, Carla presented our case, no surprises there. She laid out the facts of the affair, the secret transfers, and the emotional distress I had been subjected to. But the moment that turned everything was when she presented the photo, the one that Charlotte had so carelessly sent me, thinking it was a harmless gesture. Benjamin's face paled when he saw it. He glanced at his parents, who were sitting in the front row, but they didn't make eye contact. The look of shame was unmistakable. Then, Carla made the most brilliant move of all. She handed over a copy of a recording, taken during a conversation I had overheard at a family gathering months ago, where Robert had spoken about cutting me out of the will. The recording was legally admissible, and it showed exactly how calculated and deliberate their actions had been to push me aside. It was over for Benjamin. The judge ruled in my favor, granting me a fair share of the estate. But more than that, it exposed the level of manipulation and control Benjamin's family had tried to exert over me. The public nature of the case had been enough to damage their reputation, and Benjamin's career, a once promising future in finance, was suddenly in jeopardy as word of his affair and deceit spread through his professional circles. The final blow came a few days later when Charlotte, thinking she could somehow sidestep the mess, tried to reach out to me. She sent a message saying that Benjamin was going through a rough time, and she just wanted me to let him explain. I laughed. It was a cold, detached laugh that startled even me. I deleted her message without responding. I never heard from Benjamin directly again. His calls and texts became less frequent, and the last time I saw him was in passing, when I was leaving my new apartment. He was with his parents, walking down the street like nothing had changed, but when his eyes met mine, I saw it. A flicker of regret. Not enough to redeem him, but enough to make me realize something important. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need his acknowledgement. He had already lost. He had lost my trust, my love, and most of all, he had lost his own integrity. He had chosen a life of deceit over one built on truth, and that was a choice he would have to live with. In the end, I walked away with more than just financial compensation. I walked away with my dignity intact, with a renewed sense of self-worth, and with the knowledge that I could survive whatever came next. As I sat in my new home, looking out over the water and listening to the sound of the city bustling around me, I finally felt at peace. I didn't need revenge to feel complete. I needed nothing from him. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole.